Hello, my name is Zachary Wellington, and I have ADHD. I was diagnosed in second grade when I was 8 years old in 1998. As soon as that diagnosis happened, I became part of a broad stigma associated with ADHD, and I have had to deal with personal and social concerns that come with being diagnosed with ADHD. When I was first diagnosed, my parents and I asked the natural question, well, what is this? What does my child have? What do I have? And as I've learned throughout the years, there's no real easy answer to that question. ADHD comes, with a broad spectrum of criteria, and there's a lot of variables that go into it. I mean, one of the technical definitions is ADHD is it's psychological, and it's when it's psychological as well as medical, I guess is the correct way to put it. And it basically defined is any behavior patterns that exceed the normal range for a child at a particular moment and time in their life. And that's really confusing because, children are going to naturally, fidget in their chair and, interrupt when you're talking. And they're going to be rambunctious and they're going to be full of energy. And, that's just natural. These are natural things that children do. So if these are the criteria, that go into being ADHD, and they have to exceed the range of behavior for a child in that particular time, well, then where's the line drawn? Where does it go from being normal child behavior to irregular child behavior? And that's what I've been trying to answer for, a long time. When I was in elementary school and I was first diagnosed, I was, separated on the grounds that I was one of the only kids that had to excuse themselves on the way to lunch to get a pill. My Ritalin dosage, I took that all through elementary school. I believe I may have switched to Concerta very late in elementary school. But I had to go to the health room and take a pill. And, that was not normal when compared to the other students. So, of course, they were going to naturally ask me questions like, well, why do you have to do that? And when I told them what ADHD, when I told them it was because I had ADHD, well, they're like, well, what is that? And because my doctor's answer was so complicated, and he, on top of it, had to explain it to a 8-year-old who is still fresh in life and is still learning the world, well, I couldn't, very well give my friends a solid answer. I just said it was something that I had, and I had to take medication for it. But because I was asked those questions, it separated me, and it made me part of a stigma. My parents had to explain to other parents what I had. They had to, say my son has, they had to explain to parents and teachers that my son has this medical and psychological condition that needs, help. We have to perform modification behaviors, and we have to work with him on modification behaviors and strategies to help him focus. And we need to do that in combination with medicine. And to many parents, that meant that if I was not medicated, I was just going to be, I guess, for lack of a better term, a Dennis the Menace. I would be committing all these, all these acts of wrong, and I would be, overly out of control. And I just, couldn't be handled unless I had this pill in my system. And that was, that was not 100% true. It was only 50% true. But it definitely, when diagnosed, put me into a stigma that children diagnosed have. ADHD, it had been around for decades before the mid-1990s. However, all of a sudden in the 1990s, it became that there was an ADHD boom of sorts. All of a sudden, parents were, rushing to medicate their children for all these issues that were not, quote unquote, natural for their child at that stage of their life. And a pharmacological researcher by the name of Julie Zito actually took it upon herself to put together a research assignment and compiled information about, medications that children were taking, and asking herself, are children being diagnosed too much? Are we over prescribing drugs for conditions that haven't been tested accurately enough? Are children being tested way too early in their lives to even begin to get a remotely accurate result? And one of the startling results that she found was equal to or around 1.5% of children were being prescribed dozens of psychotropic drugs for many different mental conditions as young as 2 years old. And it was very startling how just this ADHD being among one of those conditions that out of nowhere it just went from being this mainstream condition that people knew about to it escalating and causing a widespread panic among parents, among other things such as depression and hyperactivity, just general hyperactivity. And this research that Julie Zito did actually gained the attention of then First Lady Hillary Clinton, who also asked the nation, are we medicating our children too much? Why has there become a widespread panic over conditions such as these? And I personally believe that the pharmaceutical industry had a lot to do with it. They were, they were trying to feed off parents' desires to want to, if their child had something that seemed wrong but probably wasn't, they wanted to fix it. If their child seemed a little different, they wanted to fix it. And the quick fix is prescription drugs. I mean, it really is. Some parents have a hard time trying to take the long road, which is, sitting down with their child, modification behaviors, modification strategies, and yeah, they just, I guess that seemed like too much of a hassle to them. They just didn't want to take care of it at all. And so ADHD has this history of being one disease that caused a panic. Parents were, rushing into doctor's offices. My child is fidgeting too much. My child is interrupting. My child is, talking a lot. He's being rambunctious all the time. It's uncontrollable. And really, it might have just been a child being a normal, everyday child, full of life, full of energy. It may not necessarily, to the parent, it may have been too much, but it could have just been it could have been just the right amount for that child. It's very hard to draw the line between natural energy level and, activity versus irregular. And that's one of the big questions that we are going to approach with this documentary. Is pharmaceutical drugs the best option? What is the best option? And we've asked a good spectrum of people who deal with children of all kinds, learning disabilities, ADHD, and who have interacted, solidly with them and was able to come up with a good idea of how to handle these types of situations. We've asked educators, daycare personnel, and we've asked parents. And we're basically trying to see what this condition, what this condition is, how to effectively handle it, how to effectively educate those that don't know, and how to effectively make sure that by putting a child with a condition such as ADHD into a social setting, that you can do it in the best way possible so that they will not be looked at as different, they will not be part of a stigma, and that with just a little bit of proper education and, explaining what this is, which, as we already, discussed, is difficult to do, but if we can do it in a general sense that everybody can understand, then the child, then questions won't be asked. Why do you have to go to the lunchroom to take these pills? Why do you have to, separate yourself from the class for your certain behaviors? Why do you have to, basically take medication and, have to be handled differently than us, with the whole modification scenario and behaviors. And we're going to address a lot of these things.